Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about flight. Flight refers to flying, birds, airplanes, the things that are in the air above us. I always wonder, what was it like thousands of years ago when humans looked up and they saw birds flying in the air and they dreamt of being able to fly. In this lesson, we'll talk about flight. We'll talk about everything that flies in the air. We'll talk about birds. We'll talk about airplanes. We'll talk about helicopters, all of the things that fly. And obviously the things that humans invented so they could fly as well. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about flight. To fly. So let's start with the verb to fly. We use this verb to talk about everything that is in the air. An airplane will fly. A bird will fly, a bat will fly, a helicopter will fly. So when you want to talk about something that moves through the air beautifully, something that soars, something that glides, we have a few other verbs as well. The general verb and the most correct verb to use is the verb to fly. And you can also use this verb to talk about what you're going to do. So this airplane is flying. And you could say, I am going to fly to Paris next week. So the verb, the most common verb and the best verb to use is the verb to fly when you're talking about birds and airplanes and other things. And then we have the word flight. So flight simply refers to the same thing. And you can use sentences like this, like the bird was in flight. These people are in flight right now. So flight refers to, again, everything that can do what humans can't do on their own. Birds, bats. Bats are a little scary, but we have the word flight, the noun flight. And what makes flight possible? So when you need to fly, most of the time, you need to have wings. You need to have a wing. So an airplane will have a wing on each side. A bird will have a wing as well. And the wing is the part of the airplane or the part of the bird or the flying squirrel. By the way, there are flying squirrels as well, that allows that thing or that animal to fly. There are other ways for things and animals to fly, but a wing is probably the most common. When you see an eagle flying in the sky, it has two large wings. When you see an airplane at the airport, it will have two large wings and then smaller wings at the back. They're not actually called wings at the back, but you will have two really large wings on an airplane, and a bird will have wings as well. And why do you need a wing? So we're getting a little scientific here. You need to generate what we call lift. This is what allows things and animals to fly. The ability to generate lift means that the wing allows air to move faster over the top and slower underneath, and that creates two different pockets of pressure. And my understanding is the low pressure is what generally generates the lift. This is not a science lesson, but in order to fly, this is what's actually happening. Air is going faster over the top of the wing, creating low pressure. I was going to say creating suction. That's a different word a bit. And air going under the bottom of the wing either has the normal air pressure or high pressure. So it creates lift and it makes the object or the airplane or the bird go up. Birds do something else to help generate that lift. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. Then we have other ways to fly, and that is one way is to have something that's lighter than air. So this is a hot air balloon. It doesn't have wings. It doesn't use that to generate lift. Instead, inside the balloon is something that is lighter than the air. That might simply be hot air. That's why it's called a hot air balloon. But it basically has something inside that allows it to rise through the air. In the past, it's instead of hot air, it has been other things I don't want to say the other things. I can't remember what they are. But if you as a child ever get a helium balloon, you'll notice that it floats in the air because it is lighter than air. But yes, hot air balloon. Have I ever been on a hot air balloon ride? No, I have not. Would I ever go in a hot air balloon? I don't know. I'm scared of heights, so that would be, I'll have to say probably not. We'll see. I did go ziplining, so altitude. So when something is in the air, and usually we're talking about airplanes and helicopters, when something is in the air, we say its height by using the word altitude. So if an airplane is 500 meters above the ground, we would say its altitude is 500 meters. Sometimes altitude refers to meters above sea level. There's kind of two ways of measuring it, to my understanding. But basically, altitude would be the distance that you would measure from whatever is flying to the ground, or from whatever is flying to sea level, the altitude. Early flying machines. Let me see where I am in my lesson here. So my understanding is that there were a lot of different early flying machines, but we do always look at the Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, I think. I might have my facts wrong. Who built the Wright brothers Flyer, which was one of the first powered airplanes. I think the first powered airplane, but we would call these early flying machines. So when you're talking about the history of flight, when you're talking about the history of manned flight, flight that takes place with a person, we usually talk about the Wright brothers. And I don't know exactly how they built it. I do know that they were excellent bicycle mechanics, and it had a small, very low horsepower engine, but they were able to fly along the beach. I often wonder if they flew along the beach because they could use the wind to help them, or so that if they crashed in the sand, it was soft. I don't always know the full details. But if you look at pictures, you'll see early hot air balloons, early flying machines, some that didn't work. But if you do some research, it's pretty fun to do. And we call all of this aviation. Sorry, I shouldn't say all of it. When we talk about human beings flying using early flying machines and airplanes, we call it aviation. So if you know someone who's going into aviation, they might be becoming an aviation mechanic. They might be becoming a pilot. They work in the world of human flight using airplanes and other flying machines. And so that is the general term. We call it aviation. So a few simple terms. Aircraft is used to refer to anything that we built as humans that flies. Generally, we use this to refer to airplanes. So this is an aircraft, and it's from KLM, which is the airline in the Netherlands. I tried to represent a couple countries here. We also have airplane to specifically talk about this kind of machine. So aircraft is a general term for anything man-made that flies, whereas airplane refers to this type of machine. 2 wings, engines. Sometimes it's a passenger airplane, and sometimes it's a cargo airplane. And usually in English, we just say plane. We don't always say airplane. You can use both for sure. You have what's called a glider. So a glider is a type of aircraft that has no engine. So it needs another airplane. It needs an airplane to tow it up to a very high height so that it can glide. So it has really big wings and no engine, and it will just slowly glide to the ground. So not only is glider the name of this machine, it is also the verb we use. So a glider will glide. It's supposed to be very peaceful. There's no engine noise, and you just kind of use the winds to kind of glide and slowly go down and up a little bit too, if you can catch the wind properly. And then we have a helicopter. So I think I might have mentioned this before. When I was a kid, this is one of the things I was hoping to be able to do someday. Not work for the LAPD, but I dreamt of flying a helicopter. So even though I'm afraid of heights, for some reason I thought it was cool. There were a few TV shows like Airwolf, where the lead character had a helicopter. And so it seemed fun to me. But I never pursued that. When you talk about something you wanted to do that you didn't do, you say that you didn't pursue it. And of course, we have pilots and co-pilots. A pilot would be the main person who flies the plane, and the co-pilot would be equally trained and equally competent to fly the plane as well. But for really large planes, you almost always have two pilots, a pilot and a co-pilot, for a few reasons. One, when everything goes well, you only need one pilot, but sometimes things go wrong, and then it's good to have two. It's also because sometimes a flight is so long that they can take turns. You might have a crew of 3 pilots where one is sleeping, one is the pilot, and one is the co-pilot, and they'll rotate as they fly a really long flight. Because like most humans, we can't do something for more than 7 or 8 hours without becoming a bit tired or fatigued. So it's good to have a co-pilot. And then we have, of course, takeoff and landing. So takeoff refers to when the plane is on the ground and then it uses its engines to go up in the air. If you're sitting in a passenger plane, you get pushed back in your seat during takeoff, and the plane shakes a little bit. Here, let me mimic takeoff. It's like you get pushed back in your seat and it shakes a little bit, hopefully not too much. And then I always like the part where, the plane's shaking and it's rumbling a little bit and you can hear the wheels on the tarmac. And then all of a sudden it gets a little quieter. That's my favorite part. Just as the plane, you sink in your seat a little bit and the plane goes up and then it gets just a little bit quieter. So yes, so you have the plane going down the runway. It's a little bit loud and shaky, and then it quiets down a little bit, and then you are in the air. Landing, I don't like as much. I'm always worried when the airplane is landing because you just keep going down, and sometimes it's not smooth. Sometimes you're like, you can feel the plane kind of, and then all of a sudden you hear the wheels hit, and then the plane levels out. So that is the landing. I don't have a picture of it, but a little while ago at Toronto Airport, an airplane flipped upside down. It landed and then it flipped upside down. It was actually, I think it was just before one of my kids was flying home from university. So I was like, I hope their plane doesn't do the same thing. So you have departures and arrivals. So when you go to the airport, I didn't want to make this lesson about air travel, but I felt like I do need to mention takeoff and landing. And when you go to the airport to go somewhere, you find the departures area so that you can depart. And then when you land at an airport, people can meet you at the arrivals section of the airport. So I've been to both. I've been to the departures section to drop people off and wave goodbye. And I've been to the arrivals section to pick someone up from the airport. So you drop people off at the departures part of the terminal, and they come in at the arrivals part of the terminal. I like air travel. It's pretty cool. I think it's one of the coolest things that humans have invented. Let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about flying animals. So I didn't just put birds because there are more than just birds that fly. But let's talk about how humans were inspired to fly, what they were looking at that made them think maybe we can do that someday too. So here we go. A bird. So the other day in my short English lesson, I was out videotaping and I saw a red-winged blackbird. So this is the second reason why I thought I should do a lesson on flight. I was walking along and I saw the bird on a fence. I think it's actually in the video. If you look in the chat, I think Nightbot is sharing that every once in a while. But it was a really cool bird and then it flew away. Birds fly. It's amazing. It must have seemed amazing, almost like magic to ancient people. They probably looked up and thought, how is that happening? How is that bird flying? But a bird would be the most common type of animal that flies. And a bird does something a little different. A bird will flap its wings. So an airplane has rigid wings, and it generates lift by moving through the air. A bird has wings that it can flap. This is the verb we use. As the bird flaps its wings, that will generate lift. So that's how a bird is able to fly. And also because a bird has feathers. The feathers very much help the bird to fly. Like a bird wing can change shape, right? It has all these feathers, and as it flies, it can fold its wings in, and then it can spread them out, and it can do different things with its wings and its feathers so that it can fly. We often find feathers on our farm because we have geese, and there are all kinds of birds that fly and live on our farm. So every once in a while you will find a feather, and it's very, very cool. So there's a kind of bird that's called a flightless bird. So even though this lesson is about flight, I thought I should mention that birds like penguins are flightless. We have chickens. They can sort of fly. Like they're kind of in between. Our chickens can fly enough sometimes to, if they can climb on their chicken coop, they can fly over the fence just. Like they can't fly for 100 meters, but they can fly 2 meters. But some birds can't fly at all. Like an ostrich is a flightless bird. A penguin is a flightless bird. Basically, we describe them by saying that they can't do this activity. The bird is flightless. And then birds sometimes, especially pet birds, have their wings clipped. And I wanted to talk about this because when a bird has its wings clipped, then it can't fly. And we use this phrase to talk about people as well. So let's say that, let's say there's a race car driver and he's told that he can't drive the car for 3 weeks because he did something wrong. You might say he had his wings clipped. Let's say that someone was prevented from doing an activity they like to do. We would say they have their wings clipped. A good example of this would be a teenager. If a teenager does something bad and the parents say you're not allowed to go out for 2 weeks, you're grounded, we would say they have their wings clipped. So I'm not sure about all the details of this or whether it's even kind to do this, but when a bird has its wings clipped, it means it cannot fly. And then a bird will perch. So we had the verb to flap. A bird will flap its wings. When a bird sits on a branch or a twig, or even in its cage, it will have something called a perch. Or even if the bird is on your arm, like if you were training falcons or something like that, the bird will perch. So when a bird uses its feet to grab something, to stay in one spot, we use the verb to perch. This bird has decided to perch on this small branch. So that simply means the bird is going to sit on that branch. A flying squirrel. So I wanted to put this one in here because I wanted to make sure you knew that other animals can fly, and also because the word squirrel is very hard for English learners to pronounce. This is a flying squirrel. Not every squirrel can fly. The squirrels that live by me, the squirrels that live on my farm in the trees, can't fly. But there are places in the world where there are flying squirrels. I would actually say this. They're more like gliding squirrels. So they put out their body, I wouldn't call them wings, so that they can float down to the ground. Should I say the word squirrel a few more times? This is a flying squirrel. It can climb up a tree, and then it can jump off the tree and kind of fly to the ground. A flying squirrel. And there's also bats. We do have bats on our property. We like bats. Bats come out at night and they fly around and they eat insects. So the more bats you have on your property, the less insects like mosquitoes you will have. So the more bats, the better, even though I find bats a little bit creepy. They're, yeah, the flying squirrel is cute. The bat is a little scary in my mind. I'm not, yeah, I like bats. I don't like seeing the bats. I like it when they do their work at night when I can't see them eating all of the insects. And then, of course, let's talk about a few human activities related to flight. So we have things like skydiving. Skydiving is when you jump out of a plane, something I will never do. And then you open your parachute and you slowly float to the ground. So again, you jump out of the plane. Your ripcord might automatically be pulled when you jump, or you might actually go in free fall for a while. That's where you just fall through the sky until the altitude says whatever you want it to be, and then you would pull your ripcord and your parachute would open up, and then you would slowly float to the ground. Why would Bob not go skydiving? Number one, I'm afraid of heights. Number two, I'm afraid the parachute won't open. I have two fears. One, I don't want to be that high in the sky. Two, I'm afraid the parachute will not open, or we sometimes say deploy. The parachute might not deploy. That's just frightening for me. We also have hang gliding. I think this has been replaced a bit with paragliding, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what is more popular right now, but hang gliding is when you have a large kite-like contraption, I'll call it, so that you can kind of glide and float through the air. So you would go hang gliding and enjoy the slow gliding descent to the ground. We also have something called a jetpack. I think this is called a hydro jetpack. There's also jetpacks where you have jet engines. And basically it's like a backpack. A backpack is a bag you use when you go to school and you put your books in it. A jetpack looks the same, except it has jet engines, or in this case, it has water nozzles that shoot high pressure water so that you can pretend to fly or fly. I mean, you're not pretending, you're actually doing it so that you can fly. I would try this, I think. Although I wonder how, you probably have to be quite strong to use a jetpack. And then paragliding. So paragliding is kind of a combination, you can see, between skydiving and hang gliding, or one of those other things. So basically you are flying through the air on this type of wing and kind of gliding to the ground. I'm not an expert on paragliding, but it's also something I'm never going to try. Well, I did have a slide for hot air balloon, but it's not in the folder. So that was the last slide. I was thinking hot air balloon is the last slide, but that's it. That's the end of the lesson.